throughout my life, I've heard about how violence in video games can actually have an effect on people. And how has that conversation changed? Is that something that you look closely at TakeThis.org?
Yeah, so the studies that were done around violence, the connection between violence and video games have actually largely been debunked. They were not very good science. And we know that actually as video games have become a larger and larger part of the economy and of our social and cultural conversations, violence has actually decreased overall. And so there really isn't a good correlation between violence and video game playing. That's really a myth that's become part of the popular culture and part of our tropes talking about video games. There are, to be sure, plenty of violent video games, but there's really no good evidence to show that they're part of making people do violent things in real life.
What about from the gaming addiction standpoint? There's startups like Players Lounge that provide funding or awards to people who are not pro, a way to make money gaming without being a professional. Are you worried about these kinds of organizations in the effect that it has on people's willingness or need to play video games?
Not really. We don't know very much, actually, in terms of science about video game addiction. There's a lot of moral panic about it, and that's natural. You know, video games are still relatively new part of our culture, and we're still understanding how they operate in a lot of ways. We see this whenever new technologies come along. We saw this with television. We saw this with movies. We saw this even with radio. There's these kinds of moral panics that come up. And so it's natural for that kind of thing to happen. But we do need to do more research to understand exactly what's happening when people play video games, especially when people play video games a lot. We just don't understand it. And that's something that Take This is engaged in, is looking at how do we understand this better. There's some great researchers out there who are looking at ways to tackle this question.